Hey everybody, Tony D, and welcome to your Hollywoke hot take. And today we're going to talk about Neal Adams, famous Batman comic book artist. Yes, I know, comics. Before we get into it, quick shout out to my cousin who watches my channel. Thank you for watching, cuz. Hope you feel better. Hope the road to recovery is very short. He's dealing with some medical problems, and hopefully, yeah, he's on the road to come back, and things will come together soon on that front. Anyhow, talking about Neal Adams. Oh, one other thing I got to mention too. If you're not seeing your comments on my YouTube channel, I'm noticing some kind of disappearing. Like I see them in the not under the video, but like when I click on, there's a thing that'll show me the comments or notifications, and then I'll go, oh, here's an interesting comment, and I'll click on it, and it won't be under the video. I don't know why that's happening. It's probably a YouTube thing. They're probably censoring certain things. So just be aware. If you don't see your comment, it's probably YouTube kicking it off for some crazy reason. So I guess my advice would be to give it a minute and try it again. But make sure you're refreshed before you do that, because some of you do that and then it gets to be redundant. I don't know. But YouTube is wonky. BitChute not as wonky on that front. They use Discus for the comments, and they're developing their own comment section. Just to let you know. Okay, sorry, big wind up there. Hollywook hot take is about Neal Adams. For those of you who don't know, Neal Adams is the guy sort of defined the modern Batman. Back in the 70s, he was doing them when like Batman was all cut like Bruce Lee, and he used martial arts, and he was a real detective. Neal also, and he was super progressive back when progressive people meant something and had principles. And he did one of the groundbreaking stories with Green Arrow and Green Lantern, where they went on a road trip, and Green Arrow's sidekick Speedy became addicted to heroin, and it was a huge deal at the time. You know, it was comic books tackling these really hard issues. It was new ground. He broke new ground. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for Neal as a creative. Unfortunately, it sounds like he's got TDS pretty bad, but you know, he's always been a progressive guy, so I'm kind of not surprised. But some of the stuff he's posted, and this is the coverage of Bounding into Comics, which is a pretty good site if you're into comics. Let's read a bit. DC Comics Batman artist Neal Adams, famous for his iconic designs of Batman and Green Arrow, currently penning Batman versus Ra's al Ghul, recently told white people to, quote, try not to be white in your heads. So here is the tweet. White brothers and sisters, try not to be white in your heads. Please try. You must be smarter than that. See, he's kind of got the hippie thing going when he says white brothers and sisters. So it's very strange. It's very strange, and it's all caps too, which is kind of boomery. But you know, Neal's an older guy. You know, he's got to be at least in his 70s. So and he's got some other comments here. You know, comments about Trump. Donald Trump has made me ashamed to be white. Ashamed to be white. I don't know. I don't know what that means. And made me prefer to identify with whatever amount of me is otherwise. One day I hope to be less ashamed, not now. That's from March 19th, 2019. But this other tweet was very recent. This is July 21st, 2020. I don't know why he would say this stuff, especially since he's working, but you know, there's a lot of woke people at DC now. Not as many as Marvel, but you know, and they chronicle a lot of his tweets here. July, 20th. New York Times, at New York Times. You know in your heart that, I guess that's supposed to be, Donald Trump is stupid. But he's stupid like the bad guy from Germany, or a junkyard dog. Is practicing sending stormtroopers into various cities. He doesn't want mail-in votes. So who does he present as the head of the post office, and to do what? First off, Neal, I don't think the guys he sent to Portland were stormtroopers. See, when you send stormtroopers, when you're actually a dictator, you don't just send a handful of guys to defend a courthouse in a situation where you could be overwhelmed. Those guys in the courthouse could be overwhelmed, unless it could reach a critical mass where they just break in the door and come storming in, and they're forced to use live ammo just to defend themselves. Fortunately, that didn't happen. By sending in more people, to some extent, that de-escalates it, because, I mean, these guys in Portland, go to Andy No's Twitter feed, Neal. See all the damage they do. See them throwing industrial-grade fireworks at people. Those fireworks are not playthings. And it's, it's stupid. What does it have to do with police brutality? What does burning down a courthouse have to do with anything other than, I guess, being an a-hole? And here's a really strange tweet. You stupid monkeys. I don't know who you're addressing with that. You better watch yourself on Twitter, Neal. I'm telling you, they'll come to get you. Look at the courts. Yeah, the courts are pretty bad. Look at the Justice Department. Trump is chewing his leg off for every possible trap you have for him. And we are too stupid to know. Don't answer your door at night. What does that mean? Is he threatening people? This is also from July 20th. The Justice Department, look, Barack Obama had a guy in the Justice Department who was basically like his personal attorney. And a lot of presidents, pretty much going back to at least Nixon, have been doing that. So, a lot of people drop Trump's antics at his feet like, oh, why does this happen? Well, it didn't just happen today. The libertarians have been complaining about a lot of this overreach, executive overreach. The most recent, of course, has been since the Bush era. The Bush era, man, it was a ton of overreach. But, Obama just continued it. So, what do you want from me, dude? I mean, everybody said to Obama, don't use drones. Close Guantanamo Bay. Reverse all this Bush era stuff. Oh, no. He's so smart and wonderful. He'll use it wisely. Well, the thinking in Washington was like, don't worry. Hillary Clinton will get in, and she'll use that stuff even better than Obama did. How'd that work out? So now you gave all this power to guys you don't like. That's why you don't give these guys power. Okay? And Trump, for all his faults, has been remarkably restrained in all this. I remember back in the day, and I'm sure Neal does too, I would look at the old footage of the hippie riots, and the cops would come out and club these poor bastards. And they were very violent, the cops. Now, they weren't using guns a lot of times, and they didn't have all this like high-tech, paintball with pepper ball thing in them and stuff like that. They would just club people and really hurt them. But now you have that. And now, you've got these really violent rioters trying to tear down a courthouse and tearing down businesses. Neal, how would you feel if you were sitting in a comic book store doing a signing and a brick just comes flying in there and a bunch of Antifa guys come in there and start screaming about intersectional feminism and how you use the terms "you stupid monkeys" on your Twitter account? I don't think you'd be inclined to go, hey, let's have a dialogue and let's sit down. You'd be like, dude, you just threw a brick through a window. These people don't mess around. They're very punchy. So, there's, and really getting on, this reminds me of what happened to Jim Stranko. I don't know if you remember this. This was a while back on the old internet. There was this thing called forum posts, right? And people would post in the forum. So this was, I guess this was right after September 11th, maybe a few months after. And there was a comic out called The Pro. And the premise of The Pro was, it was a really good comic if you haven't read it. But the premise was, what if you gave superpowers to a prostitute? And she's kind of a terrible person, and she's still kind of a prostitute, even as a superhero. And they did this book, and it's really super vulgar, but it's fun. It's a fun book. I recommend it. And so Stranko kind of had a meltdown about it on the forum. I don't think the post exists anymore, but he went off and said, basically blamed society is crumbling. It felt to me like an old comic guy post, or an old man post. It's like, oh, society's crumbling. You have 9/11. Now you got the pro, and all these terrible things. Like, this is what Neal on Twitter feels like. It feels like an old man yelling at clouds. Don't do it, Neal. Don't do it. I know it's tempting, but just shooting your mouth off of Twitter, it doesn't really work. It's not like talking to people. That's the thing I think older people don't get with Twitter and the internet to a certain degree. It's a different kind of communication. You can't, and I had to learn that the hard way too, back in the forum days. I would say stuff and then I'd realize, oh, people don't understand that I'm being sarcastic here, and they don't understand. There's no subtle nuance. They can apply emotion wherever they want to what you post. So you have to be very careful, and you can only communicate so much. So here's another post. That New York Times and Washington Post. This last weekend, Donald Trump said, when questioned, that Fauci made many mistakes along the way. I leapt from my chair and cried out, how dare you? He never made any mistakes. He gave us science. You took the science and twisted it and made mistake after mistake. Fauci never made one mistake. I don't think that's true. Except to try and support your your insane ramblings. Now, Navarro spoke the same words you spoke, and you say the words didn't come from you. You, sir, are many times liar. You, sir, are a many times liar. They were your words, and I heard them. Yeah, I mean, look, this is July 15th, so these are pretty recent. First off, Trump's not going to read your words. That's the thing. You're shouting into the wilderness with Twitter. You're just saying stuff, and you're wording it like you're writing a letter to the editor. It's not how this works. Okay, Twitter is about posturing and optics. So people posture on Twitter, and then that's kind of how they get retweets. And it's also a sorry state of affairs on Twitter too, because the people who tend to get retweets and followers are people who victimize themselves, right? So the other day, somebody posted in the writing community, and this happens a lot, like things like this, something like, my father passed away, I could really use some new followers, or something like that. And I was just like, whoa, that's kind of weird. Like, why would you say that? Right? And they just sort of put themselves out there in desperation for attention, almost. And look, I get it. If your father passed away, that's heavy. But Twitter's really not the forum for that. Okay, this isn't 10 of your friends on here. This is like public, unless you can adapt your Twitter just to be just your 10 friends see the tweets. But, this was like, oh, everybody feels sorry for me kind of tweet. And I did feel sorry for the person, but, what am I supposed to do? I don't know you. I barely know the people who follow me on Twitter. I can't. Am I supposed to just stop in my tracks and then suddenly go, oh, this person, they had a family member die. Let me, find out who they are and learn all about them. I mean, I guess I could. I'd be doing that all day if I did that. So the internet becomes kind of impersonal in that way. And, this sort of raging against Trump, like, he's not going to see this, dude. This isn't the way you do it. Like, if you want to get at Trump, you go after what he said and say, that's not true, and here's why. And then you post a link to something. That's how you go after him. Not that everybody on the planet isn't doing that, but, I mean, if that's what you want to do. Here's one against MSNBC. At MSNBC, why are you media a-holes grinning like Jack A's while you are talking to medical people about cures and treatment? How would you idiots feel if you caught the virus and they told you you had to wait for antibodies or the vaccine? Oh, but that means you could die. Yeah, I mean, again, like MSNBC is not going to read this. They're just going to ignore it. The only people who are concerned about this stuff are comic fans like me, and because you said it. So, I mean, I guess you could turn the comic guys around, but like, the woke guys, they already hate Trump. And the not woke guys, the anti woke guys, we see him as just another president, really. And the reason we end up defending him a lot is because it's such an overreaction to him. And this is kind of an overreaction. It's not too bad. It's not too crazy. The caps were a little much. But, this is like old man stuff. Here's another one. It's a two-parter. Tisk, tisk, tisk. You wouldn't be smiling then, would you? Oh, it's the same one. You would want them to hand-deliver the latest experimental drugs and antibodies to you. 2 effing day. The country's in chaos and the doctors are no help. Citizens, not officials, would fix this in a day. Part of that I agree with, but, I don't agree that the country's in chaos necessarily. But I do believe in the power of the citizenry, so I will agree with you on that. But they don't have the authority. Officials have it. Well, the problem is they have too much, in my view. Do you know how many Union generals had to go through to finally find Ulysses S. Grant? I don't know what this has to do with it. Somebody who could do the job. Doctors have to find a new way to advance medicines now. If Cuomo or Biden were put in charge of the country today, we could have solutions tomorrow. Untrue. Look, I get it. You don't like Trump. But don't kid yourself. Biden, Cuomo, everybody in Washington, they are political animals. They don't do anything unless it helps them politically. Okay? Solutions tomorrow? No, that's not going to help them politically. I mean, they're going to present whatever their solutions are as solutions, whether they're cures or not. That's part of the problem with politicians, right? So let's say Biden gets in and there's some vaccine. Oh, we have the vaccine now. See, Trump was an idiot, and I cured you, and blah, blah, blah. And they start doling it out. And then a few weeks later, people start getting sick. What do you think's going to be the reaction? I'll tell you this much. It won't be, well, we messed up. We're going to have to recall that vaccine. No, it'll be, right-wing trolls are saying that the vaccine doesn't work. That's not true. And they'll double down on it, and people would get sick. And it wouldn't matter to Biden because it's not about people. It's about his politics. Assuming he could even make it to the presidency, which I don't think he could. If Cuomo or Biden were put in charge of the country today, we could have solutions tomorrow. Not true. And Cuomo's not even running. So instead of that, millions are infected and hundreds of thousands die. Do some research on viruses, Neal. I think you'll find that it's very hard to wipe out a virus. And that herd immunity is probably the only answer. And you boobs chuckle with your medical guests and never ask them the hard questions, like, why the hell aren't antibodies given to every sick person? You put sick person. And why can't you accelerate your test? Why are we hoping that The Rock will do your job? Stop laughing in the face of death. We hate you for it. Well, don't make a joke in the middle of this rant from July 7th. You undermine your own thing here. They can't accelerate the test, Neal, because people could die if you rush this thing. They're believe me, they're rushing it as it is. And quite frankly, I probably ain't going to take the vaccine, the first one they come up with. I'll wait quite a while, thank you very much. And I'll rely on hydroxychloroquine, whatever you call it. And there's more stuff about Trump and being a bigot, blah, blah, blah. So, again, it's just progressive stuff. But, Neal's a little more on point than your average SJW. So, like on this one, more ugly rich white executives from major car corporations are siding with the administration against emission controls in California. Who doesn't expect dogs like this to support killing the people with unreasonable air, like in the old days, while they line their pockets? Yeah, I don't totally disagree with your sentiments here, Neal. But this is a different time, and you're an older guy, so you know, make your comics and do your research before you tweet, because it's not a form like a lot of people are going to listen to you because you're Neal Adams. You got a big name, so it's worth it for you to drill down a little bit more than normal, because these tweets stay up forever, man. And if you mess them up, are you going to come back and say, oh, I messed up this tweet and here's the real story? No, you're not going to do that. This is a very disposable medium you're existing in. So my advice is to change it up a little bit. You've got progressive bona fides. You got a big name that you're already working in comics, dude. Do you really need this headache? I would just put out positive things that people can do. You know, stuff like, hey, I just bought an electric car today. I hope everybody buys an electric car, and you can one day reduce the emissions in the air. I mean, stuff like that. I mean, you certainly could afford a Tesla. I can't, but put your money where your mouth is, kind of thing. And people respect that, right? They respect that you're doing the thing that you want everybody else to do. It's fine to come out and say, oh, I won't be voting for Donald Trump because blah, blah, blah. Nobody faults you for that. But, this constant whinging, I don't think it really helps you. Makes you sound like a whiner instead of a guy who does cool stuff. And you do cool stuff, and I think you should stick to doing the cool stuff, Neal. Because that's your strength, And you're writing these stories, man. Put it in your comics. Put it in your comics. That's what I say. Anyhow, that's Neal Adams, everybody. Batman artist extraordinaire and super progressive.